I'm Marcy Axelrod. I've spent the past 20 years helping companies achieve. I spent a decade as one of the leaders of the high-tech strategy practice in Silicon Valley of one of the global four big management consulting firms. And what I learned through that process of helping companies achieve is that you have to help the individuals within that company achieve. Whether they're trying to innovate, whether they're trying to just follow a process and a script step by step, we're always hitting challenges. There's always something in the way. Things are rarely ever just very smooth. And this is for short-term goals of just having an effective on your game day. And they're also for much longer term goals that take place over years, over decades, and over our lives. Some of which are professional. We want to do well. We want to be promoted. We want to earn a certain income and have nice things in our lives. But we also want to have great relationships. We want to have successful marriages. We want to have great parenting rapport with our children. So this is what we're going to speak about today. It's innovating and achieving across the canvas of our whole lives. So my research spans 20 years. It goes back to 2001. Starting in 2016, I started to do very particular research where I asked people, how on your game are you? And things took off like wildfire. People were gathering around me. I started to, in essence, facilitate group discussions everywhere I went. It could be in Costco. It could be at the beach. The moment you bring up how on your game are you, everyone wanted to chime in. No one felt as on their game as they wanted to be. So this specific research focusing on what it means to be on your game and what it means to have a high achieving and really an innovative life shows that over 80% of Americans feel we substantially underachieve our potential. I asked people to choose a number on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is completely on your game. And 1, well, you probably wouldn't be here listening to this speech if you were a 1. I'm going to pause now and ask each of you, what is your number? How on your game are you? And what I'm asking is, how high achieving do you feel you are compared to where you feel you really could be? Do you have your number? So I'm going to tell you what the average is for America. Back in 2016, America was about a 6. That's not very good. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've moved up toward a 7. We have not achieved a 7. My pre-pandemic numbers back in October of 2019 were getting up toward about a 6.5. My guess is with the pandemic and everything we've needed to rewrite in our lives, all those habits that got thrown out the window, like going to work, my guess is we're down at 6 or below. So what are we really talking about here? And what does it mean to lead a high achieving life? Well, first of all, innovating and achieving are largely the same thing. Remember how you felt just now as you were doing that exercise? Grappling with who are the customers? What really do they want to accomplish with the product or service that I'm creating? What really is the differentiation with what's already out there, with all the other things that they could do to address those needs, right? Those highly important, underserved jobs in their life that this product or service really hones in on. We recognize that these are challenging things. So let's dive into 3 things, and this is what we're going to focus on for the next 15 minutes. Understanding why our achievement is below our potential. 2, understanding exactly what we can do about it, and then applying very, very specific tools called the game board and the on-game pyramid to help us achieve more. Now, what does it mean to be on our game? 99% of my survey respondents have the same definition of on their game. We all know what it means to feel high achieving. It also means we're being creative and innovative. So I'm going to read to you now what they tell me. On your game means getting stuff done, making progress, being effective. It typically has two parts. There's a practical side that puts check marks on our to-do list, and there's an emotional side, right? It feels validating, it feels effectual, powerful. So it's both today and it's enduring. When we really dive into the next level, we understand that there's an emotion affiliated with it. People feel energized, alert, ready to conquer life. They feel healthy and motivated. There is also a skill that people describe, right? Being able to handle issues in stride, paying attention to detail. Some people talk about a process, right? Being in a flow state that transcends awareness of the activities themselves, feeling in the zone, right? And then finally, there are people who talk about an outcome, right? They mention consistently hitting their goals, exceeding what was asked, and this evasive being able to juggle life and work, right? Without feeling like things are falling through the cracks. So this is what it means to be on our game. Let's talk about why we're not on our game. There are two sets of reasons that people give. The first is just the basic, I'm busy. I didn't take the time to plan. These are really big things that we're going to talk about. But the next layer down that people also share is that their basic foundational needs to live a good life aren't in place. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not eating well. They're not fulfilling their discipline around exercise. We're not spending enough time with the people that really matter to us. So what I've done is I've developed two tools that help us with these things. Because what I'm going to show you now is what an off-game life looks like. It's a diagram here. And it shows time on the x-axis and what happens what our behavior is when we're off our game. It shows that over time, when we don't handle off-game impacts just because we're busy, they fester in the background. They marinate. What I'm talking about here is that feeling when you walk into the office of there's a colleague who's just always competing with you and you haven't really addressed it with that person. Or there's a project that you're working on and you think that a process should take a certain path, but your project plan that you developed isn't the one that people are following and you haven't dealt with that. Or there's a certain interaction with your teenager that happens over and over and over where she's confrontational and the two of you hadn't sat down and asked, what are some other ways that we can interact with each other? So when these off-game impacts sit in the background and we don't deal with them, we think we're just moving forward on this top line, but really what happens is it's wearing away at us. Our discipline goes by the wayside. We have that second drink. We stay out too late. We're watching Netflix when we should be sleeping. We hit the snooze button, right? And then we don't feel up to getting together with our friends, or we don't reach out to people to learn that next new thing. The book is significantly less interesting, right? Because we're tired and just not feeling great. There's no way to be innovative, right? There's no way to come up with new ideas when we're depleted. So the off-game impacts persist until we can't take it anymore. And that's what this chart is showing. We suddenly make a change. And when we make a change from the place of we can't take it anymore, it's not a well thought out, well planned evolution that gets us to a better place. This is when we blow up at somebody. This is when our behavior at work is perhaps a little bit less patient and considerate than it should be. So this is what an off-game life looks like. Once again, it happens because we don't take the time to plan. We're just too busy and we leave off-game impacts existing in our lives instead of dealing with them. So there are two tools that I'm going to show you now to help deal with this. The first is what I call an on your game pyramid. On the pyramid are the fundamental things that we need to have the discipline in our life to have focused, productive time and feel good about ourselves, but also to stay on our game long term. So this is derived from Maslow's hierarchy of needs and a lot of other research that I've done. And on the bottom layer here, you see things like sufficient sleep, nutrition, spiritual pursuits, having at least a modicum of social and emotional intelligence, right? Because we have to recognize our emotions to be on our game. There's a foundation layer, there's a mid-level, and then there's a pinnacle. And this will be available to you after this talk, so we don't have to dive into it much here. Let's dive into why so many of us are sixes on the on your game scale, right? Why do 80% of Americans say we dramatically underachieve our potential? What my research shows is that as challenges arise in life, be it a relationship that's not doing well, a situation at work where every time we walk into a meeting, we get that same lump in our throat because we know that our voice isn't going to be heard, or that someone is going to dominate the discussion, leading to a subpar decision at the end of the day. We aren't stopping to address these things before they become really big issues or just persist and wear us down. So that's the first thing. People say, you know, stuff happens and I just push it aside because I'm busy and I'm trying to get something else done. So the off-game impacts persist. The second thing people tell me is that they don't take the time to plan. And planning time is innovating time because you're thinking about how will things take place? What do I need to do to make it happen, right? What new kind of novel points in my process need I engineer, right, and design in so that I get the outcome that I want? The second thing that I want to share with you is a game board. And what the game board does is it adds structure to our innate achievement process. You can also view it as an innovation process. I'm going to take you back now so that you recognize that this is a process that you already know and you already practice. What we are going to do is make it more consistent and make it this go-to tool for you that you can employ in the moment to bring mindfulness when you notice an off-game impact occurring as you're walking down the hall to the meeting, because that's when we need it. So picture yourself now, you are 5 years old. You are in a sandbox. Most people tell me they are making a sand castle or a mud pie. You can be making whatever you want. You've got your little red plastic shovel. You're done with it now. You put it to the side because it's time to pat things down. There's another child who sees that your shovel is available right there, and they take it. What do you do? In my workshops, people tell me, some of them just get enraged and they go and push the kid over and grab it back. Other people tell me they realize, oh, I didn't really need that. That's okay. And they just keep patting their sandcastle. Other people say they scream for the teacher or counselor. There's a whole set of different answers. What's important here is the process. What we just did is notice, decide, act. We noticed someone took the shovel, we made a decision of what to do, and we acted on it. And as this occurs, and as we get wiser and older, we also check in. How did that action work out? Did it achieve our goal? Did it leave everyone feeling good? Am I going to do the same thing next time? Or will I do something different? Notice, decide, act, check in. This is our universal achievement process, right? It's such a high level process, but simply distilling it to 3 steps enables us to employ it whenever we need. We can use it for something that's been festering in the background for a decade, like a relationship issue, or we can use it for something going on right now as we grapple with what market are we really talking about this solution being in? Who are we really competing with, right? Do I need this type of thinker and skill set on my team or this one? So what exactly is notice, decide, act? Notice is serving ourselves notice. It's writing a note, right? It's a different level of something beyond just, oh, that doesn't feel good, but I'm busy, I'm gonna move on. It stops us from that negative process that kills our innovation and kills our achievement. So notice is a very deliberate activity. What is decide? Decide is that you're not going to leave things the way they are. Decide is this is an off-game impact, pushing me off my game. It's inhibiting my innovation and my achievement, right? So there's a commitment there. And what we're also deciding is, what are the set of options here? It's typically a lot broader than we realize when we don't have a piece of paper and pencil in front of us. Now, act. Act, I recommend to be a very small step. What I'm saying here is just keep the forward motion going, because with a very small step, you can start a very, very big change. If you don't know what to do, the act is ask a question, Google a friend, a confidant, get information. What did you mean when you said that? The point is, don't do nothing. Take action. Notice, decide, act gets us unstuck. It takes those off-game impacts from the back burner, brings them up front so that we can move forward. Now, let's see now what happens when we apply the game board when the off-game impacts are still very, very small. The volatility of life settles down. Now we have the discipline to turn off the Netflix and go to sleep before 2 a.m., right? Now we have the discipline to stop after a single glass of wine. Now we have the discipline to get up and get to the gym. Now we have the discipline to smile at people and engage in discussion so that we learn more. A positive spiral now starts because as we learn more, we feel more options in life. We feel more possibilities. We're far better able to design our way forward, prototype as we go through life. What would happen if we did this? Maybe we should talk to this person. You're far more likely to reach out to people, to engage with things, to learn, because you're notice, decide, acting your way through. You don't get stuck. This is an innovative life. This is an on-game life. Now, let's switch gears, because I want to speak to you about all the things outside of ourselves and our brains that knock us off our game, or that can be positive things to amplify our innovation and achievement. The whole second half of my book talks about things in culture, from other people, and in technology. I'm going to give you just a few examples. Let's talk about technology. Just one study I'm going to cite. My teenager hates this. University students, thousands of them, went in for an exam. 1/3 of them were told, leave your backpack, which has your phone, outside the door. Another 1/3 of them are told, you can leave your backpack right there by your chair, but the phone has to be in it. 1/3 of them were not told anything. And most of these people took out their phones, put them right there on the table. What do you think the results were when it came to the test scores? Yes, it's exactly what you thought. There was a direct linkage between the distance to the phone and the score. More distant, higher score. So the kids with the phone on the desk did the worst. The kids with it in the backpack right by their chair did second worst. And the kids who had it way outside the door did the best. What's going on here? Our brains, in the presence of our phones, have background processing going on, which is an expectation that the phone's going to call to us. There's going to be a chime, there's going to be a beep, a ring. Even in the absence of that, there's activity. There are people sending us messages. There are things going on TikTok that we may want to know about. It's occupying our attention in a subconscious way, thereby reducing and inhibiting our ability to function well, to process information, to focus. So That's one example of how technology can knock us off our game. Of course, it does a lot of positive things too. Let's move to culture. We have a culture that respects privacy, right? You avert eyes in the elevator. You certainly don't walk up to random strangers very often on the sidewalk. We have a culture that respects busyness. We have a culture that right now shows reduced empathy. We have a culture that is so averse to having a few moments of peace to think that more than half of us administer electric shocks to ourselves. This was a study done by Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia back in 2014. And what he found is that when he left people to just sit and think for between 6 and 15 minutes, over 40% of them chose to administer shocks to themselves, actually cause pain, instead of just be left alone to think. Now, these people knew what the shocks felt like. It wasn't just for curiosity, because they had actually been able to test the shocks when they went into the experiment before they were asked to do nothing. And everyone said it was painful. In fact, the majority of them said that they would actually pay to avoid being shocked. And yet, when they were asked to just sit and do nothing, but the shocks were available, they actually chose to inflict harm on themselves. So this is the culture that we're in. We want to be busy. We want to distract ourselves with anything so we don't have to think. And this is probably a big part of why we don't just sit there and plan our achievement out, why we leave off-game impacts to fester on the back burner. Now let's talk about other people and how we interact with other people that can either catapult us more on our game into a more innovative, high-achieving space, or how these people can knock us off our game. The process of looking in someone's eyes for just a few seconds leads to something magical. What happens is our brain waves actually start to move together. It's called resonance, and it happens right through our skin, right through our skulls. We actually become one thinking being, right? We unify as one brain when we look in someone's eyes. Now, what does this do, right? It connects us viscerally. There's an emotional connection that takes place in addition to a physical one in our brain waves. Our interaction with that person as a result of this is far more likely to be patient, thoughtful, compassionate. We're far more likely to be on the same page with that person going forward for the future, right? Not just for the next day. Other things that happen with people is this jumping of emotions, right? You know what it's like to walk into a room with someone who's pissed off. It feels awful, right? Just saying it makes my chest tighten. When that happens, our visual field shrinks. Our creativity shrinks. Our interest in other things and ability to consider options, to be innovative, really flies out the door. We have a choice, right? Not about whether we absorb others' emotions, because that will happen and they will absorb ours, but we have a choice to make about what emotions we want to put out there, what we want to feel, right? Just like we can share disgust and rage, we can also share joy. We can share excitement, curiosity. And this is really what we want to do, because it helps ourselves as well. And it almost creates a little bubble around us that's going to help our life be more on game. So those are just some examples about how people, our culture, and our technology have a very, very strong impact on our ability to successfully innovate and to achieve. One more thing I want to share with you, right? Some parting words, if you will. We are substantially more powerful than we realize. The work of Nicholas Christakis, he was at Harvard for a number of years, at Yale more recently. He showed that behaviors such as voting, whether we go to the gym, our body size, risk-taking behaviors, move through 3 degrees of people. I'll explain. Each one of us has an average of about 20 people in our close sphere. This is typically our family, our friends, and the people we work with. Those people are 45% more likely to do what we do, just from their time with us. And our behaviors, though, aren't just behaviors. They're also our thoughts and our feelings. Now, those people's friends are 25% more likely to do what we do. And then those friends are 10% more likely to think, feel, and act what we think, feel, and act, right? To do what we do. So when you think about that, right, 20 times 20 times 20, there's 8,000 people right there who are being very directly impacted by what we think, feel, and do at all times. And of course, it doesn't stop there, right? These aren't the concentric circles of ripples in the water from throwing a pebble. No, this is an earthquake, right? Because we are constantly making choices. We are constantly doing things. Our entire life is our legacy. We impact the world in ways we have no idea about, and it happens constantly. So I want to leave you with this. We have a huge responsibility to work to be as on our game all the time as we possibly can be. So take this notice, decide, act framework. You can just write NDA on a pad of paper anytime you need. And when you notice that feeling that something isn't right, you don't like what's going to happen, you're anticipating something, or just there's been something that's been in existence a long time and you just want to improve it. Notice, decide, act. It can take less than a minute. But as you successfully chip away at these things, so much goodness will fall into place for you, and you will naturally be able to innovate your way forward and live a more on-game life. Thank you.